British aircraft are banned from crossing Belarus after a Ryanair plane was forced to land there. The jet was diverted amid Belarusian claims of a bomb threat, but as soon as it touched down, a dissident journalist aboard was detained to international outrage.
The scenario, as reported, is a shocking assault on civil aviation and an assault on international law. It represents a danger to civilian flights everywhere.
So tonight, a criminal investigation's launched after the gas blast that killed a 2-year-old at a house in Lancashire. Tributes to Max Mosley, former Formula One boss and privacy campaigner, who's died at the age of 81. And
the horse from nowhere has captured the hearts of the nation.
From Blackwood to Hollywood, the tale of one of horse racing's most unlikely winners hits the big screen.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. The UK government has tonight told airlines to avoid Belarusian airspace after a Ryanair flight was forced to divert to the country so a dissident journalist could be arrested. The Foreign Secretary, Dominic Raab, called the act a shocking assault on civil aviation and an assault on international law. A bomb threat was made, forcing the flight to land in the capital, Minsk. Ryanair's boss says he suspects KGB agents were on board. The country's national airline has now been banned from the UK, and the government has demanded Belarus release the journalist and his girlfriend. Our global security editor, Rohit Kachru, has the latest.
It should have been a 3-hour hop, but their plane was hijacked by a nation state. The Lithuanian Prime Minister had to board flight 4978 after what she called an act of state terrorism by a neighbouring country. British planes were told to stop flying over Belarus as its ambassador was summoned to the Foreign Office. London, one of many capital cities where meetings like this had been called. And a question for the Foreign Secretary was whether Russia had given the OK for these arrests.
It's very difficult to believe that this kind of action could have been taken without at least the acquiescence of the authorities in Moscow. But as I say, it is unclear as yet.
The flight left Athens at 8:29 a.m. UK time, entering Belarus airspace, then changing course, landing in Minsk at 11:16. It left there after more than 7 hours on the ground, arriving in Vilnius, its original destination, just before 7:30. A fighter jet was sent to accompany the passenger jet, a mission signed off by a president known for suppressing critics. Roman Protasevich has helped to publicise the movement against him, and he was arrested with his girlfriend. His father is still waiting for news.
Последний раз мы с ним общались вчера. Речь касалась отдыха, о том, как он обгорел на солнце. Но сегодня мы пытались с ним выйти на связь. Я так понимаю, еще до его вылета из Афин. Но на связь мы так и не смогли с ним выйти.
But from Belarus, the opposition leader told me she feared Roman might have been harmed while in custody.
We know how cruel our KGB is, and we suppose that he's been tortured at this very moment.
You suspect he's been tortured?
Yes, absolutely. It is typical. My heart is bleeding every day.
What ended on this runway might only be beginning as leaders consider the best response. The nature of oppression within Belarus is well known, but this was a new method played out in someone else's airspace. Rohit Kachru, ITV News.
Here, detectives investigating a gas explosion in Lancashire which killed a 2-year-old boy have tonight launched a criminal inquiry. George Arthur Hines died in the blast in Heysham just over a week ago, and police now say a gas pipe had been cut inside a neighbouring property. Our correspondent Rachel Younger is here with me now. I mean, this is awful, isn't it? What is the background to this case?
Well, the explosion was horrifying enough anyway. The pictures showed a scene of devastation. It was an explosion strong enough to destroy 2 houses completely and damage substantially a third. And those who were living in the area woke up in the early hours a week ago last Sunday, believing a bomb had gone off. That's how serious it was. Serious enough to claim the life of 2-year-old George and injure both of his parents. It left 2 other adults in hospital, and they're still there with injuries that are described as critical. And if that wasn't shocking enough, tonight's development is simply going to compound that sense of shock and loss, because what's emerged is that after a week of searching that area by police detectives from Lancashire Police and gas engineers, they have now confirmed that the cause of that blast was a pipe being cut at 20 Mallowdale Avenue. Now, that's believed to be the home next door to the house where George and his parents live. Detectives say they've managed to recover a few of his personal belongings, some comfort at least for his parents, but they are urging anyone with any information, however insignificant it may seem to them, to come forward.
Yeah, just terrible. Rachel, thank you very much. Now, a prominent black rights campaigner is fighting for her life in hospital after being shot in the head. Mother of 2, Sasha Johnson, was attacked in South London, and members of the political party she helped set up say she had received death threats. But a friend says she may have been caught in the crossfire of a gang feud. Here's Sasha Johnson.
This is what democracy looks like! This is what democracy looks like!
Sasha Johnson, a mother of 2 and an ardent political campaigner who was at the forefront of many Black Lives Matter protests last summer and is behind a new black-led political party.
Enough is enough!
Tonight, though, she is in a critical condition in hospital after being shot in the head. This marquee, the scene of a party at the weekend in South London, now the focus of a police investigation into the shooting.
I do believe that it was a party and there was some type of dispute between 2 individuals or 2 gangs, and it was wrong place, wrong time. I do not believe that she was the target.
Forensic officers have been investigating the scene all day, and those in her political party believe Sasha Johnson was brutally attacked following numerous death threats. The Metropolitan Police say they are pursuing a number of lines of inquiry, but they say there had been no credible threats against Sasha Johnson before this incident, and they say they don't believe that she was the intended target. This afternoon, a vigil outside the hospital where Sasha Johnson is in intensive care.
I felt shocked, I felt saddened, I felt angry, and above all, I was thinking, because I know her, 2 of her children, and I felt pain for what they must be going through.
A family and community want answers from the police, who are trying to work out how and why Sasha Johnson was shot. Sejal Karia, ITV News, South London.
COVID restrictions eased significantly in Northern Ireland today. Up to 6 people can now sit indoors together for table service in restaurants, cafes and bars. 6 people from 2 households can also meet in private homes and stay overnight. And all tourism accommodation and attractions like museums, cinemas and bingo halls can reopen. Now, tonight, how some patients are being told they have to wait 3 years to see a dentist, and others are being booted off practice lists if they don't make an appointment. A survey of patients in England also found that some people are being offered swift private care as an alternative and sometimes feel pressured into paying. Campaigners are calling for urgent reform. Ben Chapman reports on a very painful problem.
Come and have a seat for us.
Few people enjoy seeing the dentist, but many thousands of patients would love to be in Wendy's place. She's been waiting 6 weeks for treatment, but many can't get seen at all.
Upper left 7.
This dentist says he still has to wait half an hour to clean the room between patients, making the backlog impossible to clear.
In the past, we might have been able to see patients that required treatment back to back. Now we have to sort of almost close the surgery down, the room down for 30 minutes. We should look to try to reduce that time that's potentially lost because we can't see our patients.
A review by Healthwatch England found some patients are being asked to wait up to 3 years for a dental appointment, but told if they go private, they'll be seen within a week. Others had been removed from practice lists for not making an appointment sooner, and some were even advised to use salt water or buy DIY filling kits while they waited.
In very extreme cases, we've even heard of people resorting to their own sort of tooth extractions at home, which, no one should ever be put in that position of being in so much pain that they feel they have to pull their own teeth in order to get in order to resolve the problem.
Russell's been waiting 6 months to have a tooth removed on the NHS. He needed to book a private appointment to get it diagnosed, but can't afford to pay for the treatment.
The longer it goes on, the worse the problem is going to get, and the more difficult and more expensive and more painful it's going to be when it eventually does get sorted out. So it's a real shambles.
The government says more than 600 dental practices are providing extra support with urgent treatments. But the British Dental Association says the system was in crisis even before the pandemic made it worse, with many now likely to suffer long-term problems as a result. Ben Chapman, ITV News.
Still to come, the ITV Evening News, why there is an atmosphere of fear, not excitement, for many in Tokyo ahead of the Olympics. And the remarkable racehorse whose fairy tale story has been made into a movie. Those stories and more after the break. Join me then. Hello again, welcome back. Formula One has paid tribute to the pioneering work of Max Mosley following his death at the age of 81. As head of the FIA, motorsport's governing body, he made the sport safer for drivers after Ayrton Senna's death in 1994. Mosley was also a celebrated privacy campaigner, having successfully sued the News of the World. Garen Vincent looks back at his life.
Much of his career was spent in the public eye, but it was a fight for privacy which brought Max Mosley perhaps his finest moments at the Royal Courts of Justice, where he successfully sued a tabloid newspaper for intruding on his private life.
They had no right to go into private premises and take pictures and films of adults engaged in activities which are no one's business but those of the people concerned.
The judge ruled that there was no evidence to support the News of the World's claim that a sex party Mosley had attended had a Nazi theme. That was an allegation which was particularly damaging to the claimant given his family history. Mosley's father was Oswald Mosley, leader of the British Union of Fascists in the 1930s, who was interned during the Second World War as a suspected enemy sympathiser. It was power struggles in the sporting world that his son became famous for. Max Mosley and the business mogul Bernie Ecclestone had both tried and failed to become motor racing drivers as young men. Years later, they teamed up to gain control of the sport. After the great Brazilian driver Ayrton Senna was killed in an accident during a race, Mosley brought in changes to the rules which made driver safety an absolute priority. His departure from Formula One came soon after his fight with the News of the World, when Mosley found celebrity allies in continuing his not entirely successful campaign to place restrictions on the activities of British newspapers. Having had details of his private life exposed in the most devastating way, the rest of Max Mosley's public life was devoted to defending the principle of privacy.
Garen Vincent there on the life of Max Mosley. In other news, a former porter at Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital has been jailed for life for a string of sexual offences against young boys. Paul Farrell admitted to 69 offences against 8 victims spanning a period of 35 years. The 55-year-old didn't target children while working at the hospital but befriended the boys' parents and acted as their babysitter. The BBC will hold a review into its editorial practices after a critical inquiry into the 1995 Panorama interview with Princess Diana. It found the broadcaster covered up deceitful behaviour by the journalist Martin Bashir. The BBC board said it hoped to make sure that mistakes of the past could not be repeated. And the steelmaker Liberty Steel is to sell off a number of its sites, which employ 1,500 people. This includes its largest plant at Stockbridge near Sheffield. The company's main financial backer went bust in March. Now, with just 2 months to go until the start of the Tokyo Games, the host country is gripped not by excitement but unease and fear. The city has been placed under a state of emergency as the government desperately fights to keep coronavirus in check ahead of the start of the Olympics. And mass vaccination centres have just opened to try to protect the most vulnerable. But there are growing protests and calls to cancel the Games. From Tokyo, our Asia correspondent Debbie Edwards said this special report.
For some, this clock is counting down to Tokyo's day of reckoning. It was meant to generate excitement, but there are too many people here who think the already delayed Games should be cancelled altogether. With 2 months to go until the Olympics, it was only this morning that a mass vaccination programme began in Tokyo. It aims to process 10,000 people a day. But at that rate, just the over 65s will be covered before the opening ceremony.
8割か9割ぐらいやっとけばスムーズにオリンピックできると思うんですよ。
Doctors have led many of the anti-Olympic protests. Virus numbers are still rising in Japan, and medics fear a super spreader event when 60,000 people, including 11,000 athletes, arrive in the country. Even if a majority have been vaccinated and the teams are to be tested on a daily basis.
The way government handle with pandemic is very terrible in Japan because government always put priority on Olympics, not our lives or public health.
Still, the torch relay is forging on. The route has been curtailed, but not the enthusiasm among those allowed to take part. An Olympic Committee member has vowed to hold the Games, even if Tokyo is still in its current state of emergency. Skateboarding will make its debut at the Olympics, but a brand new venue built to host the competition might have to stay empty. There may still be room for another twist or two in the tale, but it seems Japan is determined to stage these risky games. Debbie Edward, ITV News.
One of the first viral videos on YouTube has been sold for £500,000.
Charlie bit me.
The clip of baby Charlie biting on his big brother's finger was put on the site in 2007, initially just to show family and friends. It's since been viewed more than 800 million times. The Davies Carr family decided to auction off the clip as a non-fungible token, or NFT, which is a record to show that you own something digital. And finally tonight, the incredible real-life drama behind a new Hollywood movie. Dream Horse charts the unlikely but true story of how a Welsh Grand National winner was trained on an allotment in South Wales. And as Mark McQuillan reports, it's all a little bit surreal for the community behind the inspiring tale.
What about Dream Alliance? It's our dream and we're all in it together, so Dream Alliance.
You wouldn't normally associate Blackwood with Hollywood. But then again, this tale of triumph over adversity from the Welsh town is made for the silver screen.
There's a less than 1% chance this horse will ever win a race.
A group of 20-odd friends who took a punt on breeding a racehorse and succeeded against the odds. Chipping in £10 a week each, they took Dream Alliance from this slag heap to victory in the Welsh Grand National in 2009.
but Dream Alliance ridden out will get home in the...
Now this story of a distant dream being realised is being relived by an all-star cast, creating a surreal experience for the community at the heart of it.
I was thinking to myself when I seen it, do I say things like that? Do I act like that? So, yeah, it's really odd. It's like an out-of-body experience.
I think what people will get out of this film is the fact that you can start at the very bottom of something and reach the pinnacle of it, despite having almost fatal obstacles in the middle.
Those obstacles came in the treatment room rather than the racecourse. Now happily retired in Somerset, Dream Alliance had to overcome serious injury to succeed. His owners were told he'd never compete again. But like any good plot, there was a dramatic twist as he recovered to secure his greatest victory.
I can't imagine a more inspiring story for audiences who've been locked up in the house for 18 months to come and have an hour and a half of escapism.
And an uplifting story with unlikely success and a dream ending may well be one which audiences welcome when they make a long-awaited return to the cinema. Mark McQuillan, ITV News.
And that's it. Tom's here at 10 from me and all the team. Bye-bye.